Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. So as I said, we are continuing studying the Queen's Gambit Declined, and our game today is Vidit against Kryvoruchko. Also a very recent game, which is not a surprise since this A4 variation is really coming to passion this year. So every game is pretty fresh and could be even game of the week in some sense. So let's see what happened here. So again, they started with this move order, exactly like in the course, castles, knight bd7 and a4. Kryvoruchko played knight h5, bishop e7, queen e7 and a5. So this is our so-called tabia position here, and Kryvoruchko played knight d to f6, which is also the main move. I mentioned that also a6 is another possibility for black, but I believe black players are not completely happy with that move, even though it stops a6, but it loses a vital tempo for this bishop f5 plan, for which black is playing for. So I believe it's a good time to show a good illustration that what can happen after a6. And the plan, which is not at all surprising or shocking in this knight g2 system of the Queen's Gambit Declined, happens. So if you watched previous videos, you know very well why this knight g3 is not so advisable. Maybe very briefly, I will say that this f3, e4, and after the trade, g pawns are not good, and also, in some sense, this pawn structure allows for black to create some ideas because h3 is not available. So in general, we don't want this structure. So the move is very logical. What I would recommend here is knight to c1. So first of all, this is a tempo on the knight, but it's not too relevant because black wants to play g6 or knight f6 anyways. But more importantly, the goal is to protect our center. So in order to play f3, of course, we need the rook on e1 and protecting this pawn on e3. And the knight will be also really nice on b3, protecting our other central pawn. So black plays g6, protecting the knight. We play knight b3, knight e7, and we play rook e1, protecting the pawn on e3 and being ready to push f3. And once black plays knight f6, with the idea of playing bishop f5 and really having a very nice control over the e4 square. Let's just count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces would control e4. So it would be really not that easy to achieve. If okay, let me just make a random move here, like rook c1, for example. Black plays bishop f5. We don't want the trade. And if we remove the bishop, it will be really tough to prepare e4 5 times. But of course, we don't play rook c1, but we play f3. And once bishop f5 is coming, we play e4. And we are just good here. So even though we are only supporting this with 4 pieces, but the queen is in front of the rook. So eventually, black can have a piece on e4, but it will be a rook and he's losing the queen. So we are just in time with e4, and yeah, black failed to achieve his main strategical goal, either to change the bishops or to slow down e4. So it's a success for white in this case. So therefore, knight f6 is the main move, and I showed in the previous video how I would play in this position. But what Vidit does is also extremely logical and absolutely not easy to equalize with the black pieces. So Vidit immediately plays knight c1. Okay, very logical again. g6. I mean, a6 would be just a transposition to what I showed a minute ago. So g6 and rook e1. So he's protecting on e3 and getting ready to push f3. but there are some differences actually. So I believe Kryvoruchko made a mistake here, kind of admitting that he's worse, and he's not even dreaming about equalizing very early at least, but he rather chose a passive way to play. So he played bishop e6. I mean, but it's pretty logical. This is not a good step if you want to put the bishop on f5. It is just simply developing and maybe bringing the rook and so on. But black cannot equalize in such a way. In my opinion, black should play knight g7 in this position, and I expect new games to happen very, very soon in this line, because if white is also a little bit careless, it can be very interesting for black. So we play f3. It's very logical, and bishop f5. Everything looks like the same as what I showed. I mean, the difference being that the knight is not on b3 and the pawn is not on a6, and it definitely favors black because we want the knight on b3. And in this case, of course, if we remove the bishop, this is a clear achievement for black. So he managed to bring the bishop to f5 and slow down e4, maybe then play h5, and so on. So this is some success. And of course, the big question is that what happens in case of e4, which looks very logical, and then d takes on e4, f takes on e4, and everything looks brilliant for white at this moment. I mean, we are getting what we wanted, very strong central pawns. We need really a few moves to finish development completely, and it's just a very nice advantage. But black has a very strong counterplay actually in this position, thanks to this move rook 8 d8. This is a very strong move, and for the time being, black is putting huge pressure on our center. So now you can see that, for example, if the knight would be on b3, it's not coming with a tempo. So that's already pretty relevant. And the other thing what the knight does on b3 is to connect. I mean, it allows us to connect our heavy pieces. So e takes f5 would be a move, which is not now since the rook is hanging on e1. So it's kind of move by move, not really working for white. So for example, if we go knight b3 in this position, black can play bishop e6. Even though black going backwards, it's a threat, because bishop takes on b3, queen takes on b3, and rook takes on d4 is winning a pawn. And let's say if white plays something like e5, trying to gain a tempo, and if the knight jumps, maybe some knight e4 can be interesting. But also in this position, black has a very nice resource, queen b4, and our position is very, very loose at this moment. So this knight is under attack, this d4 pawn is under attack. We are running a big risk of just being worse in this position. And the other way to protect this d4 pawn is to bring the knight to e2, but then this allows this nice move bishop g4, which is pinning the knight, and also therefore attacking the pawn on d4. Again, we can play e5, but unfortunately black is not forced to move the knight. He can just play rook takes d4, and after e takes on f6, there is queen e3 check with rook d3 to follow, and again it's not what we are looking for. So knight g7 should be played, and this is really the logical way of sparing this a6 move from black side. My recommendation would be to play f3, and in case of bishop f5, probably queen d2 is a good move. But yeah, I mean, as you could see in the previous video, I would play it differently than how we did play it here. But if the game goes like this and you like this idea, this is still pretty interesting. I mean, of course, now white can trade the bishops, which I consider an achievement. Sorry, black can trade our strong bishop, which I consider an achievement, but it's still an absolutely playable position, and computer likes it slightly better for white, but I have a little bit different opinion, so that's why I came up with that line which I showed in the previous video. So yeah, this would have been the way to play for Kryvoruchko. So he just played bishop e6, and now Vidit played f3. Of course, very logical. Rook a to d8. And now, of course, white could have played simply knight to b3, but I believe correctly so Vidit played a6. It is simply, I believe, a very useful move to have in the possession. So black is again kind of forced to play b6. And then we have a nice target here on c6. You know, like whatever happens in the future, this pawn structure is definitely an improvement. And yeah, as we have seen in many cases already, the only problem of this a6 can be that if this pawn, you know, can be circled by the black pieces and maybe taken. That's what I don't like, but you know, otherwise to have a pawn on a6 is pretty nice. So now queen d2, knight g7, and he went bishop f1. It's also pretty logical because this plan of bringing the knight to d3 and then to e5 is works together with a6 extremely well. And after that, we can also switch to this f4 idea. Although our pieces are not necessarily the best placed for that, but even just putting pressure on the c6 pawn is quite nice. Now black went bishop f5. Of course, it goes without saying even that when the knight comes to d3, black is just taking it immediately, and that's a wonderful trade for black. And e4 is also stopped for the time being. I would say black is missing one move to be relatively okay in this position, and that is h5. And we will see how Vidit exploits that missing move. He plays g4. Again, very typical move, absolutely not weakening our king. There are no pieces to attack it, no weak squares even. So the idea is simply to chase away the bishop from this diagonal. Let's say it goes to c8, and then knight to d3. So the knight is ready to jump to e5. And I just looked one more move for black, just just normal waiting move, little bit improving the position. And we could already play knight e5, but I like a move which I wanted to show you is h3. And that's the way how we activate the queen. Actually, the queen is heading towards h2. And this diagonal is just wonderful. Of course, endgames are brilliant for white because of the c6 pawn. And black queen only can go to some passive square, and our queen will be really, really happy on this h2 place. Maybe it can go to f4. We can bring the rook then to c1 or d1. Probably c1 I would do, and then knight e5. It's a very nice position and very unpleasant to play with black with such passive pieces. So therefore, Kryvoruchko went for this bishop takes g4 sacrifice. Practically speaking, I understand the move, and it's hard to criticize this move, but it's simply not enough what he will get in return for the piece. So of course fg, knight g4, and Vidit plays perfectly in this game. So he plays bishop h3. Very, very nice move. The point is that the only way we could give some hope for black is if we are like really greedy and like we are getting stuck to protecting pawns which are not necessarily the most important, and like, okay, let's say black plays knight f5 or some queen g5, and we're just putting our pieces in clumsy squares, then black may have some chances here. But no, Vidit just puts his pieces well, plays bishop h3, knight takes on e3, and knight d3. So black has 3 pawns at the moment, but there is a pin here. Our king is safe. I mean, only the queen can really join to this attack, and even though black has the 3 pawns, the key thing here is that the pawns are not in the center, which would take away a lot of squares for our minor pieces, and these are also not connected passers. So of course this 4 against 3 on the queen side is basically completely meaningless, and I mean, pushing pawns on the king side, like, if you start pushing with f5 after 95, the game is resignable. So so mathematically speaking, 3 pawns are enough for a piece, but here you just cannot do anything with the pawns. Kryvoruchko is trying though, so c5, very logical move, I would say, trying to at least create this center or some protected pass pawn in the center, but Vidit plays knight b5, very strong. Black took on d4. I mean, I looked at knight f5, which computer recommends, but to be honest, I don't really get the point. After bishop f5, gf, knight e5, knight f4, both are very good moves, and now of those 3 pawns, 2 are doubled, so definitely not enough. So Kryvoruchko took, knight takes d4, rook to d6. I mean, there was this nice idea. Rook d6, knight f4. So just putting the pieces to very nice squares, and there is simply no compensation here. Queen g5 and knight g2. Everything works in a super way. This queen is in a, I mean, not, so both of those pieces are protected, but trading extremely favorable for white. So black's position collapsed very quickly. So queen takes g5, rook e1, rook e1, h takes on g5, king g2, and finally, something which the pawns are good at to build this, formation. And now the bishop is restricted. Even g4 is a threat. I mean, king f2 is surely just a winning move, but it was already not even needed to save this bishop. Vidit played rook e7, and he's saying that this pawn is a tactical threat, very close to promotion. The game is pretty much over. So black played b5, rook takes on a7, now g4, bishop takes, f takes. So now black is even a pawn up, but if you look at the quality of pawns, basically there is only one important pawn in the board, and that's on a6. So rook a8 check, king a7, a7. Now we have the check, and then promote. So only move from black is rook to a6, and now knight to b5. Now the pawn is protected, so the rook is ready to move. Rook a2, and then rook went to f8, and we are going to be a full rook up after a8 queen, which is unstoppable. So black resigned the game. A very clean win from Vidit. I would say the only real mistake Kryvoruchko did in this game is probably playing bishop e6 here and not knight g7. And after that, he just got into very tough position, strategically speaking. And of course, here it's not a must to sacrifice a piece, and probably if the game would be replayed, he wouldn't. But that's harder to convert with white. But the position is still pretty unpleasant. But after this piece sacrifice, I believe it's pretty instructive that Vidit is just giving a pawn for in order to put his pieces optimally, and just converted it very cleanly.